So I'd like to talk a bit about what I think the game of the year should, or at least was in my opinion, and kind of contrast it and have this sort of meta conversation about sort of the criteria we use and what makes a game the best, sort of when comparing it with all of its peers. So it's interesting looking at different big YouTubers like Video Game Donkey and his perspectives on all this, and then people like Super Bunny Hop, who I'm a giant fan of. But it's like, I mean, man, talk about a great year for gaming. I mean, we had stuff like Persona 5, we had Breath of the Wild, Super Mario Odyssey. It's like, man, talk about a good year for gaming. But what's interesting is I think that my pick of the year, and this isn't to be contrarian or anything, this is a genuine thing. My pick has sort of been absent on a lot of people's even top 10 lists. And, you know, it's interesting, and it's sort of, once I go into it and some of the reasons why I picked it, I'd also like to go into sort of what are the criteria that we're using, because that might be some sort of, I think I might differ with some people as to what it is that I say is makes a game that separates good games from great games. So without any further ado, I'd have to give my pick to Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And you might think, isn't that kind of weird, giving the game of the year to a series that you've never played before? Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is the first Xenoblade game that I have ever played. And, I mean, hell, where to even start? I'd kind of maybe like to get around the edges before I actually get to the meat of it, just because of how, I mean, it's such a monumental game. I spent around like 150 hours. It's like not all that story content. Like, I was so immersed in the world that I ended up dicking around and doing a lot of side quests. And it's like, man, it's some good stuff. But I've got to give my shout outs to the soundtrack first and foremost, because that honestly was the thing that really hooked me in. Let me check real quick. Let's see. Soundtrack. I'm pretty sure it was Yatsunori Mitsuda, I think is his name. I'm pretty bad about butchering this kind of stuff. It was Yatsunori Mitsuda, Ace, Kenji Hiramatsu, and Minami Kyota. So I was like, man, this soundtrack sounds really fucking good. Why is that the case? And it turns out that the Yatsunori Mitsuda is the guy who did Chrono Trigger soundtrack, which is my favorite soundtrack of all time as far as video games are concerned. It's like, goddamn, that guy still got it. So specifically, one of the things that I'd like to really point out is that he got a European a cappella group to do a lot of the soundtracks for him. It's like, I believe the name of the group is Anuna, and it's like, I tell you what, you know you're dealing with a good video game soundtrack where it's like, so for instance, in some of the towns, like the Indolent Praetorium, when you go in there, it's just like, you're just hit with this a cappella sort of Gregorian chant, and it's like, that stuff made the hair on the back of my neck just like, I don't know, it's just, it was really, really good. To move on to another sort of category is sort of praises and weaknesses. I'd say that, let's see, combat. The combat system's interesting. So I know that it was similar to Xenoblade 1, but I never played Xenoblade 1, so it's sort of, this was a new, fresh thing for me. And I'd say it took about 15 hours for me to actually really, like, understand. I'm like, oh, okay. So for instance, it's like, so you have an auto attack that hits enemies, and while you're auto attacking, it fills up a little bar of these like little specials that you can do, and it's like, but if you chain combo them, it fills up your super bar, and the super bar itself is like, and then the supers you can combo your supers with other supers of party members, and it's like, it gets really complex. But it's like, I felt like the tutorials didn't do a good enough job explaining sort of what the whole combat mechanics are, because it's like, this is tying into something else, which is like difficulty curve, but it's like, I reached a point where I got to a boss and it was like, fuck you, you need to grind. Like, And I actually probably didn't mean to grind at all. It was just the fact that like I didn't quite understand the combat systems, and so the game was kind of like, hey, you need to step back and sort of like understand some of these things if you're going to be continuing on. It's like, so all in all, it's like I have some gripes with the combat system, but once you really get into it, it actually like really gets your blood pumping, and it's like a really interesting thing. It's like it's not a turn based thing at all. It's not a live action combat, but it's like still, it's just pretty good, pretty good. So I've got to talk about the world design too, because so it's like you have these like hub worlds, and it's like you go to these different ones, and it's like each of them is like more breathtaking than the last. And it's like you have this fucking awesome soundtrack that changes with what time of day you're at in these places. It's like that's good, but like no, it's like the world itself. It's like the concept of it is fucking phenomenal. It's like so you have this cloud sea that so it's like there's no solid ground, so to speak, like Gaia or Earth. It's like, no, there are these things that are called Titans. And these Titans are like, they are the continents that these things live on. It's like these giant organisms. And it's like, it's so fucking cool. It's like, I remember getting out into, I believe it was, the continent that Torgoth is on. It's like one of the first areas, and I remember seeing that and seeing how far it was. And I was like, "Holy shit, that's awesome!" But speaking of that, I can't remember the name of the continent. Whatever. Anyways, the continent that Torgoth's on. I remember that kind of actually goes a little bit back into the gameplay mechanics because so it's like there's this. The game has a really weird perspective on exploration, and it's good, but it's like, so you're in this first area, and you're like, I don't know, you're like some fucking baby level 3 just like piddling around, and it's like, you see this giant ape in the distance, and you're like, what the fuck's that? So you walk up to it, and it's like a level 80, and it's like, haha, this is funny, and then it like auto-locks onto me and then kills me in one hit. That happens a lot in this game. Not just that, in other areas, it's like when you're in, the third one where you're in the belly of the whale. It's like, I don't know, man. Sometimes it'd be like, oh, I'm swimming around, and you get lost sometimes, but the mini-map's actually really useful. So that wasn't too much of a problem, but I just got to give them props. The world designs were fresh. It's like, you find in a lot of RPGs that it's like, it's very sort of derivative, and it's like people don't have originality though, where they feel, okay, this level has to be like this, and this has to be like that. It's like, I've seen this fucking level like 10 times. I've played almost every Final Fantasy game, but here it was like, it wasn't the case at all. It was so fresh and so neat and nice, and it's just like, dude, hell yeah. So to go back to another thing, like the combat itself, it's like, so you have these things that are called blades, which you can think of them kind of like JoJo stands, and it's like that goes into a mechanic where it's like whenever you kill certain enemies, you can get these things that are called core crystals, and the core crystal is basically like it's like an RNG pull from like a mobile game like Puzzle and Dragons, but you're not paying for these, so that's great. It's like, but still, I think the numbers on it were a little bit fucked up because it's like, so for instance, in More Ardain, it's like there's a spot that people know about where it's like you can grind and you can grind for core crystals. And it's like, I spent like 5 hours grinding, and it's like, I got one rare blade. So it's like you have these like shitty, stupid ones that they look like robot people, and they fucking suck. And it's like, who cares about them? But when you get the rare ones, it's like you get the special cutscene, and it's like, oh, holy shit, I got a rare blade. And it's like, it's cool. It's fucking cool. The designs are good. They got designs from different people where it's like, oh, this guy worked on Final Fantasy X. Here's a character he designed. Oh, this guy worked on Final Fantasy XI. Here's a character he worked on. It's like, oh, this guy did like 90s anime. Here's a character he designed. It's like, it's so good. It's so fucking good. Man. So this kind of wants me to segue and makes me want to segue into the main story, because here's the reason this game's on the top of my like games of the year, because it's kind of like, so it's an open world game, and it's great, it's beautiful and all that stuff, and it's like people are gonna be like, well, why the fuck didn't you choose Breath of the Wild? Fucking everybody chose Breath of the Wild, and it's like, I'm kind of a big Zelda fan, you know, if you couldn't tell. It's just, I put down Breath of the Wild like right before I beat it. I got sick and tired of it. It's like the world didn't have enough interesting stories for me to want to keep playing it. The gameplay mechanics were so good, but it's like I want it's like a good meal. It's like, oh man, I have this giant bowl of soup, and man, the soup's fucking tasty, but there's no substance to it. It's like, I don't play Zelda games just for the gameplay. It's like Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game, and the reason it is because the story that it told was so enrapturing, and even after you finished it, it's like it stuck with you. Like dealing with these profound themes of loss and like longing. It's like, god damn, that's deep. And it's like Xenoblade Chronicles tells a better story than Breath of the Wild, and Rex and his merry band of fucking awesome friends. It's like, I have not seen a game that has dealt with like side character, like, you know, it's like the entourage. Like, I cared about each of the party members towards the end of the game, and it's like they fucking make you fall in love with the villains. It's like each of the villains. So it's like sometimes you'll have like with bad writing, it's like, oh, this bad guy is bad because he's bad, or like, oh, he's bad because reasons, and they never explain it, or if they do, it's fucking stupid and shitty and hackneyed and cliched. You know what? Here, that's not the case at all. Like, every single villain has a motivation, and not only do they have a motivation, but sometimes they're really good motivations, and there's a bait and switch as to like, are some of these villains really villains, and is this guy who we thought was actually like trying to help us actually like even. I don't know, I don't want to get too much into spoilers just because it's like... So I'm a philosophy major, and it's kind of like, I've read a fair bit of Heidegger, and what's interesting is that like that method of interpretation on the story just makes it so fucking profound, talking about like what is the best being in the world, like not like being in the world, not like this is a being in the world. No, it's like, how do you orient yourself and what leads to the best results? Like, what's the most fulfilling thing? Because you find that there's this existential sort of theme in this where it's kind of like the universe is meaningless itself, but given that, it's intrinsically meaningless, but given that, what's the answer? So you have the villains who make the argument that because the structure of being itself is so disgusting, everything should be destroyed. It's the nihilist answer to it. But in contrast to that, you have Rex and his friend's vision that, man, you know, life is hard, but it's still worth living. And it's like, I'm not doing this justice explaining this like this. It's like, you have to play this fucking game. It's so good. But I don't know, like, I don't cry very often when I watch media, but like, I can't count the number of times that I cried in this game. It's like the emotional punches hit you right in the gut. And it's like, it's been years since, I think it might have been like Metal Gear Solid 4's elevator scene, or not elevator scene, Jesus. The microwave hallway scene was the last time I cried like that. And it's like, there's something about the people who wrote this game where it's just like, man, they get the whole hero archetype so well, because it's like, it's so fucking good. It's like, I'm almost speechless at how meaningful this game was to me. And it's like, you guys have just got to play it. On the things that I didn't quite like so much, and it's kind of like, there's no such thing as a perfect artwork. Anyone who doesn't ever release their artwork because they want it to be perfect, it's like, no, perfect's the enemy of the good. I have to say that I liked the character designs themselves, but I did feel it got a bit too fan servicey at sometimes, and it's kind of like, dude, I like fucking hot anime girls. It's like, that's not where this critique's coming from, where it's kind of like, sometimes the way that the camera would move in the shots, it's just like, it would linger on like Pyra or Mithra's tits for like a couple of seconds too long, and it's like, I think that her armor was a little bit too impractical, and it's kind of like, hey guys, you know, it's like, dude, I like hot anime girls. That's not what this is about. It's just, it's like, sometimes showing less is more as far as like in an erotic sense, and it's like, I mean, it's like I can see like, oh, right here and here and here, guys. So I think that's something that they're gonna have to maybe work on whenever they come out with future games. But it's like, man, this game was so good. It's like I bought the season pass. It's like, and they give you a bunch of trinkets because it's like the story DLC is going to come later, and then you're going to get some mission packs. It's like, I didn't buy it because of that. I bought it because Nintendo did such a fucking good job with Monolith Soft on this. It's like, I wanted to financially reward them. It's like, god damn, it's good. But so to go back to this sort of meta question of what makes a game of the year or something along that, something along those lines, it's like, what I would really say is that for me, story is paramount. Mechanics and all that stuff come second. The mechanics in Xenoblade are great. The mechanics in Xenoblade aren't as good as Breath of the Wild, but then again, Breath of the Wild's story is not good enough for me to warrant it being game of the year. And it's like, you know, it's one of those things. I think the purpose of art, and this sort of gets into a question about aesthetics. It's like, what is the purpose of art? I'm of the opinion that the purpose of art is not to distract you from everyday life. Some people are like, oh, art just wants me to, it's like, I'm having a shitty day, and it's like, no. Art's not there to distract you. Good art, great art, not good art, great art. Like the art that people will remember decades away. It's like not something that's just like, oh yeah, hey guys, you've been playing the new, I don't even fucking know, we'll just say, oh, the new Call of Duty? It's like, oh yeah, man, it's like, nobody fucking talks about Call of Duty 10 years afterwards. It's like, they're talking about the newest one because it's all a fucking reskin. Anyways, it's like, great art isn't, the purpose isn't to distract, it's to distill truth. And it's like, not like, oh, these characters don't exist. What do you mean by truth? It's like, no. We're talking about the archetypes of these characters. What is it that they symbolize? What are they trying to say to you about your life and how you're living it? Are you on the right path? Maybe you need to be thinking more. Maybe you need to not be thinking more. It's like, that's what great stories are about. And honestly, I think Xenoblade Chronicles really nails it down. And you know, for that reason, I have to give it Game of the Year. But if we're talking about just like, okay, oh, well, Connor, you've said that Xenoblade Chronicles is your pick of the Game of the Year. Well, come on, give me your top 10. It's like, I don't have a top 10. I'll give you my top 3. Like, come on, guys. So at number 3, I would have to put it at Nier Automata. It's like, that was quite an existential romp. I mean, I'm a philosophy guy. It's like you get people like quoting Nietzsche and like you have references to like Kierkegaard and Hegel, and like it's like, fucking eat that shit up. Not to mention talking about soundtracks. God damn it, Nier Automata soundtrack. I'll save some of the stuff for another video if I choose to do so. But it's like, that's good. But at second place, I'd have to put it Persona 5 just because I'm a Persona fanboy and I'm just checking that right at the door. It's like, I fucking love Persona. And then, again, first place is Xenoblade 2. But, I don't know. What do you guys think? I've been off YouTube for a while, but I think I might try to make this a little bit more of a, just kind of get my thoughts out there. But, I mean, I'll probably work on my production values next, but it's kind of like, I first got to get to the point where it's like, okay, we're speaking and all that sort of stuff. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching.